Heidi Otway, your host for this Conversations on Cannabis virtual forum brought to you by the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative at Florida A&M University. In this conversation, we're talking about unregulated cannabis. So let's talk and learn about this subject with our guests. Captain Bobby Green has been in law enforcement for nearly 30 years, serving as a correctional deputy, a patrol officer, and he also managed the Vice and Narcotics Division at the Leon County Sheriff's Office in Florida. Our other guest is Minister Anthony Durden, who has overcome drug addiction to become a renowned motivational speaker, entrepreneur, and a spiritual advisor to offenders incarcerated in Florida's prisons. Captain Green and Minister Durden, it's good to have you both on the forum.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right. To everyone joining us on this live program, please share, post, and tag a friend on Facebook to have them join us in this conversation. If you're on YouTube, share the link so others can join us as well. During the forum, we want you to send us your questions in the comment box, and we'll do our best to have our guests answer them. We also want you to tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comments on YouTube and Facebook after the live program. Your name will be entered into a drawing on April 6, 2023 to win a $100 gift card provided by one of Mary's partners. Now, let's start this conversation on cannabis. Captain Green, I'm going to start with you. You worked in the narcotics unit at the Leon County Sheriff's Office. Tell us about your experiences with unregulated cannabis.
Well, thank you, Heidi. My basic experience has been that people seem to minimize the effects of cannabis and what it can do and what the causes and effects it causes on a community. In my experience, this is my fourth stint in working in narcotics and over 10 years experience. Weed or cannabis, whatever you want to call it, is a dangerous drug. The users of cannabis, of course, they're impaired. So when you're impaired, your judgment is also skewed. People that sell marijuana, they usually are the ones are in, let's say, have a lot of currency on them. So it tends to other types of crimes like robberies and things of that nature. So people tend to say cannabis is not a bad drug. It doesn't have the effect on the community like cocaine or crack or anything else or meth, but it is illegal until they legalize it, which is another debate. Cannabis and smoking cannabis does cause problems. And as we get into the conversation later, I'll express some of my concerns about it or my beliefs on what can happen if cannabis is legalized. But in my career, I've seen numerous people lose jobs, lose scholarships to go play football, basketball, athletic scholarships, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time or doing the wrong things with the wrong people. So cannabis has a major effect on our community and our youth, and it needs to be taken seriously. Just recently, I was working in the schools, and I've seen as young as fifth graders bring cannabis to school, thinking there's nothing wrong with it. But as we know, there is something wrong with it, and the effects of cannabis can be detrimental to you.
Yeah. So, Minister Durden, you were exposed to marijuana at a very young age while growing up in California. Tell us about your experience and your journey to where you are today.
Well, yeah, just as Captain was just speaking about in terms of what he's seeing today in today's culture, where he's seeing youth bring marijuana, cannabis to school at an early age of 15. With 13, I was introduced to marijuana. Marijuana was in the home. And I started smoking weed at 13, and I was in that age group where, and I was in the fifth grade, sixth grade. And I can remember, getting up every morning, joints was already rolled. I can remember getting high every morning before I went to school. And so, I also associate, just as he spoke about, in terms of not so much as just the marijuana itself, but the behavior that comes along with consuming the marijuana or distributing the marijuana. There's a certain behavior, and which also later on down the line develops into criminality, like you just mentioned about the robberies and whatnot. So yeah, that was my experience at the age of 13. Being introduced to marijuana.
Yeah. So how did you, we talked, you mentioned in your bio and you're well known for overcoming an addiction to cannabis. Can you tell us about that journey?
Yes. Throughout my teens and my early 30s, my mid 30s, I was embedded in drug activity, where it would start from marijuana. It started from marijuana to cigarettes, and then from cigarettes to alcohol, and from alcohol to later on in my mid 20s, I was, started indulging in cocaine use, which led to crack addiction.
Mhm.
That was my bottom. And so for 20 plus years, I spiraled in and out of prison, jails, institutions, treatment programs, you name it, homelessness. So I was a chronic person with addictive personality traits. Uh, Although I wasn't diagnosed with it, I was self-diagnosed myself as being an addict. Once I realized I was an addict and that it had taken hold of my life, that's when I began to admit myself into treatment programs. And throughout those treatment programs, going through several programs, going in and out of relapse, I would get sobriety, and then I would go back, get up, go back, get up, fall again. And so now I've been sustained in my sobriety for 19 years. 19 years I've been clean and sober from drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, that's great. So both of you all have had dealings with cannabis, over the last few decades. Captain Bobby Green, you on the law enforcement side, Minister Durden on the user side. What are you all seeing now when it comes to cannabis? And when we talk about unregulated cannabis, we're talking about illegal cannabis. Here in Florida, we know that medical marijuana use is legal, and you have to have a qualifying condition to get it through a qualified physician. But we're talking about the street level version of cannabis. So, what are you all seeing now when it comes to unregulated cannabis and the effect it's happening on our communities across the state of Florida?
Well, I'll go first. What I've seen in law enforcement realm is that the sales of unregulated marijuana has increased. When you introduce medical marijuana into this formula, it just makes the I guess the eagerness to get it even more. So now you have more people selling cannabis because they feel that they can blend in with the regulated cannabis, the sales of that. So the sales and the production, the amount of quantity has been increased. People feel as if, and there was at one point where, legislators had changed the laws where, we couldn't make arrests on cannabis because of the hemp. The hemp
Mhm.
came along, and of course, the difference between hemp and cannabis is the amount of THC content in it. So that put a strain on everything. So people were openly trying cannabis. More people were smoking, and more people were unfearful of the consequences of getting caught with cannabis. So the sales increased. The quantity of cannabis that was brought into our community was increased. So we're seeing that the amount of people that use cannabis and sell cannabis has increased over the past 2 years. You would think it would have decreased, but I think everybody likes to blame everything on COVID. But when everybody was inside the home, they were bored, they were doing things, so people experimented. We've seen the use of cannabis go up over the last couple of years, and of course, on my realm, the possession and the sale charges have also gone up with cannabis. And as the conversation going, we'll touch on some other topics, but that's what I've seen from a law enforcement realm. It has increased over the last couple of years.
Mhm. Minister Durden.
Yeah, I just see the beast unleashed. I just see it everywhere in the form of mobile units. There's shops everywhere.
And you're in
There's
South Florida. You're in South Florida. So
Yes, I'm in Miami.
yeah. So what are you seeing
Yeah,
now?
I'm in Miami. So in Miami, Miami is a very high, very high populated place for tourism. And so here in Miami, we have a lot of entertainment, and we have a lot of entertainment that's catered around uh, drug addiction. Drug use. We just had Rolling Loud down here not too long ago, which is a concert that's synonymous with getting high, young kids, using drugs. We have we have an event coming up this weekend called Ultra. And everybody know from law enforcement and all that this is an event that's heavily populated with young people, and the majority of people that's there are under the influence or using narcotics. And so, this whole thing about unregulated and regulated and cannabis and marijuana, when I grew up, it was weed. There was not a lot of government or federally sanctioned names that's kind of like dressing it up, because regulated only means it's being controlled. And, we got to look at who's controlling it and who's benefiting from it. We already know that in this industry that's predominantly ran by white men, they're the ones that are reaping the reward of making the money. And most of our people end up coming up on, they end up either addicted or they end up in substance abuse programs, because there's a lot of underlying issues that deals with this. And, anything that you're smoking, you got to first of all know that anything that you're smoking and inhaling is not healthy anyway. So that whole myth about medical marijuana, anything that you're putting fire to is not healthy. And I can't see a doctor prescribing a cigarette or prescribing a cigar or whatever to a patient because they said it's for medical purposes.
Mm-hmm. Captain Green, what is the challenge for law enforcement when it comes to, like you all are saying, the differences between people who are legally qualified to use medical cannabis, and there's different types of medical cannabis. So you have the smokable flower, you also have the edibles, you have the tinctures, you have all these different products in the medical realm versus the unregulated side, which, to Minister Durden's point, is normally, is smoked as a joint, that approach. So what is the challenge for law enforcement when you encounter people that have cannabis on them and you have to determine whether they have it legally or they have it illegally?
Well, Heidi, that's easy. There's a medical registry that you have to register in order to legally possess cannabis for medicinal use. There is you have to go on form. It's the state of Florida, and you have your name and information is indicated. And so, as law enforcement, we have access to this registry. You can request it. I was a controller in our agency one time, so I entered deputy's name in it. So when they come across, let's just say a Barbara Green, and I'm in possession of cannabis, whether it's a leafy substance, which is mostly popular, I have to have a medical registry card. If I don't, I have to. That's a violation, not having your card. And also, you can give them their name, and there's a database that you can check. Every person in Florida that has a medical marijuana, a medical card, you got to be registered. So we have ways of checking that. And if they don't have their card or it's not packaged correctly, that can be a arrestable offense at that point. So what we've seen is that the people that have been abusing this prescription, and I think that's one thing that I've always learned from my time playing sports. A doctor cannot, he cannot diagnose pain. I can tell you my neck is hurting and I got this excruciating pain. I can't get rid of it. There's no way he can go in my body and say I'm hurting. So what do? Prescribe medical marijuana. I know plenty of people that probably have abused this by saying they got this pain for so long. I have a nagging back pain. My thing is that like Pastor Minister said, I mean, what have we done prior to this time? I mean, why is medical marijuana now the answer to all diagnosed patients? 20 years ago, this wasn't the answer. So there was ways to diagnose pains. I mean, what happened to ibuprofen? What happened to the regular medication? It is a way to profit, and that's what it boils down to. It's a way to profit off of it. I ride down streets in Tallahassee and I work. I promise you, Heidi, I can pass 5 cars. I'm gonna smell cannabis coming out of 4 of them. I mean, it's just popular. Everybody, they smoke, they do it. I mean, I think the lack of fear of the consequences will happen if you get caught with it. It's not where it needs to be or where it was previously. So more people openly doing it.
So Captain Green, there was we had the state attorney Jack Campbell on the show previously, and he was one of the first in the state who actually changed the laws when it came to if someone was caught possessing a small amount of cannabis. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that's changed the way you all enforce the laws when it comes to folks having unregulated cannabis?
Yes. So, during the times when hemp came out, like I said, there was a down period. It was a period where we were uncertain as law enforcement of our arrest authority because people would say it was hemp. We had no way of testing a product. They're similar. Hemp and cannabis look just alike. All is the THC level in each of them. So we had no way of testing the THC level. So, but yes, state attorney has, we've come back on board. Now we're getting aggressive. But we have here in Tallahassee, we have a drug offender court. So if a person gets caught with a less than 28 grams or 20 grams of cannabis, they have the opportunity to go drug offender court, which is almost like you can say it's a program to say, hey, I'm not going to do it again. No arrestable, you have no charge, and you just have to maybe go to some counseling. So we try to give that option to people, but we've gotten back aggressively targeting the people that's actually selling weed or selling cannabis in large amounts, and back to our job in doing that and trying to get it back under control. So yes, here in Tallahassee, unlike Miami, where the ministry is, we're a little more liberal here, maybe you can say. So we kind of things, we're really tired. We don't allow a lot of things to happen like they do down south, and we try to get a grip on this. It's a college town, so we know a lot of students here trying to get education. So we're not trying to ruin people's lives, but yet we still have a job to do. So yes, Jack Campbell, the state attorney's office, have been in. He has been our ally to us and working these cases on people that have possession of cannabis. So it has been, I guess, really a benefit to us to have him on our side.
Yeah, a couple of other state attorneys around the state have also adopted the same measures of, they're not going to prosecute those kinds of cases. Minister Durden, can you share with us what's happening down in South Florida?
Well, like I said, this new phenom with this medical marijuana phenom is the lid is blown off, and I don't see any way of how they're going to actually control it because, like I said, it's just so widespread and there's so much money involved. And I just feel that there's an agenda. When it comes down to alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, we don't control that industry. I'm talking about the Black community. We're always the victims of these rollout rules and regulations. But the ones who are going to the bank that are making the millions off of our misery are normally the white men that dominate this culture. And the fact that now we have young Black boys that's being influenced by entertainment and sports figures. You have rap. The rap culture has embraced the marijuana culture, and I embraced it when I was young. I rode around and I listened to the Snoops and I listened to the Ice Cubes and I drank my 40 ounces in my old English 800. All this malt liquor that was marketed to our communities, and so I see exactly the same thing happening all over again. It just happened to be in form of marijuana. But like I said, like Officer said, is that it's hard to determine, who has the legal right to sell it, because from what I'm just now finding out, that there is a legal way that you can sell unregulated marijuana. It just happened to have a lower level of THC content. So the average person doesn't have to have a medical license to go buy these products out of a storefront. They have the edible gummies and all the other different stuff. You have these trucks that's riding around now, like you say, in the neighborhood that looks like the ice cream truck. And I think specifically that there's an agenda targeted at younger people, as young as children, because of the way that it's shown, where you show the lollipops on the side of trucks that looks like candy. You have the edibles that look like gummy bears. So there has to be some kind of strategic plan, a plot as to who ends up becoming the victims of those millions of people that ended up becoming alcoholics. Remember that rollout. They rolled out alcohol. Now how many alcoholics we have? So there's consequences to these choices.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that you were talking about CBD products, which are the lower THC hemp-based products. And
right.
If I heard you clearly, you said that there are ice cream trucks rolling around South Florida selling CBD, and it looks like A
They
regular.
look like ice cream trucks. Yeah, they're decorated. They look like if you was a young kid that saw this truck, you would think it was the ice cream truck. It just has green leaves that's shaped like the marijuana leaf. But they have lollipops on the side of the truck. They have candy. And it's just this stuff is just being put out there, whereas is kid friendly. So
I'm
who's to say that a kid that's going inside the local Arab store in our community, we call them Arab stores because that's who owns the store. And that's where a lot of this underground product is being sold. And when you're talking about rolling up marijuana, what are you rolling up the marijuana in? If you're rolling it up in paper, and if you're putting fire to paper and you're smoking that and you're inhaling that, there's another side to this thing. So that's what I'm saying. Even if the doctor prescribed marijuana to you, you decided to smoke it, you can't tell me that smoking anything of any form, even if it's vaping, is healthy that's healthy for you.
Yeah. Captain Green, have you seen any instances of this in North Florida?
Uh, I hate to say it, but no. Gladly we have not, but we have seen an increase of cannabis and CBD shops. I mean, they're everywhere. It is a profitable business that you probably have more of them than you have dentist offices here in Tallahassee. You would see them. They're popping up everywhere. I mean, everybody wants to corner that profit off of this. Of course, you have to have license, but once again, those shops cause problems. If I was a criminal and I knew that there was a large amount of high grade cannabis stored or being shipped to a specific facility, why not plan to try to rob this place? Which is it happened here in Tallahassee. We had one of our shops, THC vans. They were transporting and try to do a robbery on an interstate. So this is what it causes. People want it. People always say cannabis is not bad. It mellows you out. All it does is make you hungry and those type of things. But there are underlying things that happen from the cause of the addiction of cannabis, of wanting it. It's not as addictive as crack or cocaine, but it is addictive, like Minister said, and it causes you to want, or the urge to try or do different things, because it gets that in your system. And cannabis can lead to alcohol or cigarettes or even crack or cocaine or even the most extreme one, meth. So you have to be careful. And I've talked to college students here at FAMU and tell them, and I always refer to the movie Friday, and I think we talked about in our discussion. You go to a party, a house party, and people smoking in a bong or a joint or whatever or a blunt. You don't know what that person put inside of this cannabis. People lace cannabis with stuff, and of course, believe it or not, we've had people that have OD from smoking cannabis that has fentanyl on it. I mean, because you just don't know. I mean, you're trusting somebody else. I mean, I know as a grown up kid, my mother said you don't eat at people's house you don't know. Well, this is the same type of situation. You just don't grab something and inhale it and put it in your system if you don't know what it is, even if you know what it is. But that's the biggest thing, and that's the scare that you have in the community from these young kids that go out to these parties and just hang out and just pass it around, and those are the risks that can occur from this.
Minister Durden, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, he's truly. I'm a byproduct of the marijuana culture. Like I said, I've smoked it for over 30 years, and I smoked it every day. And I was just speaking about the criminality and the behavior that's associated with the culture of marijuana. Is that it prompts you to make bad decisions and bad choices. I made a lot of bad choices under the influence of marijuana. I can remember when I got released from prison and I was on house arrest and I had to report to my probation officer. And I knew that I had to be clean because I knew that he was going to give me a urine test. But because my addiction to smoking every day, and I refused to smoke because it was justified, I want to smoke every day. And I didn't think that it was anything wrong with it, even though I knew that it was something wrong with it because I rationalized it. And so that's what I get. Even when you're in the middle of doing wrong, there's some kind of way you'll always try to rationalize it. When I smoked cigarettes, it just calmed my nerves. I need a cigarette. So every time it was a compulsion to smoke a cigarette because I was nervous or I had anxiety. So the cigarette would mellow me out. Or I need to take a drink because I had a long day at work. And then I find myself this is this self-medication. And so, I went back to prison because I didn't want to stop smoking marijuana, because I refused to be responsible enough to be sober when I went to my probation officer, and also even looking for employment. No, when you're on your job and you smoking and you got that random urine test, you don't know when they may call you into that back room and tell you to drop, or they suspect you or something, or you get into an accident on the job. The first thing they're going to say is, was you under the influence of anything? And then the line of work that I do, I work in the warehouse around different people that's driving heavy equipment. So you have guys that's gotten into accidents on the machinery. The first thing they're going to say, was he under the influence of anything? And they take them to their doctor, have them drop a urine. And if they come back dirty, they get terminated from their job. So we're just looking at the behavior that comes along with smoking marijuana. I remember going on a cruise ship to the Bahamas, and traveling with marijuana into another country is illegal anyway. You can get locked up by the customs. And so I smell marijuana on the ship. So, they don't smoke with the marijuana on the ship, so for their recreational use. Mm-hmm. See, so you have that population of people who use it recreationally, and it's I would say it's undermining those who may really, really, really need it, and that are in a very critical state in their medical condition where a doctor is giving it to them under a doctor's discretion. But most of these people that's out here that's smoking, they're not smoking it for medical purposes.
Mm-hmm. And if I could comment, you hit on something I think I talked about earlier. You're right. My first experience with THC pills was I was in narcotics, did a search warrant, and it was a cancer patient. They had stage 3 cancer. They were little cannabis pills. If then it's beneficial because that person has suffering, they have pain, they can't deal with it. It helps that. But to smoke marijuana because I have a knee ache or a back pain, it is an abuse. I mean, I think it is a money marketing strategy, and we in some kind of way we have cornered it, and that's exactly what we have done. I think as a country, we're afraid to legalize it all around the board. So this is a way to monopolize the money on it, the sales on it, because everybody sees it. I mean, in my profession, the people that sell weed, cannabis, they have large amounts of quantity of money. We're
talking about the unregulated cannabis is what you're talking about.
Yes. So they have large amounts. But what I'm saying is, what the minister was talking about, it should. I think the rules should be changed about the medical marijuana. One, I think it should go back to THC pills. If you're really in that much pain, you would take a THC pill instead of smoking cannabis for your pain. It's an addiction to smoking weed. It has nothing to do with the pain. And in my personal opinion, it has been abused. There are so many people that registered medical marijuana users in the state of Florida. It's unreal at this point. It's unreal the number of people that have medical marijuana cards.
Is that making it a challenge for law enforcement?
Yes, it does.
So
now like I said, we do. There are rules. It can't be packaged in a Ziploc bag. It can't be packaged in a Crown Royal bag. It has to be packaged in a prescription bottle with their name, their data, everything. Or just like if you had a prescription of Oxycodone or anything else, you can't. That's a violation. It is an arrestable offense that you can arrest them because it's not packaged correctly. So there are rules that they have given us some things to try to minimize the abuse of it. But once again, those are small things. You can't share it. You can't give your card to someone else. You have to be in possession of your card when you possess marijuana. So they have helped us in that sense. But I think the requirements to receive one should be a little more stricter.
Yeah. You all both mentor young people, especially, in the Black community and other minority communities. Can you all talk about what you tell them when it comes to unregulated cannabis use?
I don't even use that term unregulated. I tell them straight. I shoot from the hip. I don't even get into that. I just tell them hey, listen, man, just my experience. You can't, I'm not trying to force you to change your ways. I'm not the savior. I'm not Christ. I'm just giving you my experience. And sometimes they say experience is the best teacher. It don't have to always be the case. You don't have to go through something you saw someone else go through. Let their experience and let what they went through be your teachable moment. But at the same time, it's hard to convince young people that it's harmless when they see their entertainers and athletes celebrated, when they've been given platforms to promote it. I see TV shows, Drink Champs. I see TV shows where guys just sit around and all they do is just smoke and drink, you know. And some of our biggest icons, community icons, have been on this show, and that's all they do is just smoke and drink and talk. And so, you know, it's very popular, popular cable network, and these young people are very influenced by these rappers. So it's just like I was. I grew up. I listened to hip hop. I love hip hop. You know, I was in that culture. I grew up. I embraced it, and I still do. But I embraced the positivity, the KRS ones, those who was preaching those messages about trying to be a better people, a better society. But I'm definitely, when I see things like this that happening, it's just reminding me of my own sins, and so I'm convicted because I'm seeing it, rehash itself through other people. And so my heart hurts when I see this happening and people going down this path. And so this path of destruction, because again, it's being sanctioned and it's being modified to seem like it's legit, but when it's not. We just look at what happened with the alcohol. The alcohol, there's certain alcohol that's sold in the black community that's not sold in other communities. You can't go find a 40 ounce of Old English in certain neighborhoods. You can't go find St. Ides in certain neighborhoods. You can't go find Colt 45 in the 40 ounce version or the 64 ounce version. So it just to me, it seems strategic when it comes down to certain things that's being disseminated into our communities, even when it comes down to firearms. So I just look at the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearm industry is a male dominated institution, just like the prison institute. It's all, to me, it's all synonymous. And this criminalization of substance abuse has to stop. Many of our black men and women have been incarcerated wrongfully for being drug addicts. I did a 10-month stint because I was in possession of a crack pipe. This is when I was in my crack addiction. I had paraphernalia and had to go to jail for having paraphernalia. There's people who go to jail for having a needle. There's people, and so there's no substance abuse treatment program. There's not enough of them to be able to deal with the consequences of this behavior. There's not enough self-help programs for our young people to deal with the consequences of some of these young people that are getting caught up in this dangerous world of drugs.
Mm-hmm. Captain Green.
Well, Heidi, I think my biggest concern here in Tallahassee, and it all revolves around the same thing. It's the biggest issue we have here is gun violence, and I try to relate that to the drug use. I try to tell my young kids who I talk to on a regular basis that there's consequences in everything you do. Every action that you take, there's going to be a equal reaction or a consequence to that action that you've taken. And choice you make. But like the minister just said, it's very hard to tell a kid, 18, 17-year-old kid that's in high school, smoking weed is bad. Well, look at Lil Wayne. Look at Snoop Dogg. He's on the show with Martha Stewart. I mean, he admits to smoke weed all the time. But I said, yeah, but how many Lil Waynes and Snoop Dogg's are there? What do you want to be in life? Because if you want to be anything successful that's a honest paying job, and you can't smoke. I mean, I have relatives that refuse to smoke, and I mean, could have had a great job with the city, but flunked drug test. And you get to an age where you're like, when do you quit? When do you want to successfully have something positive in your life? If you can't give it up, you're not going to be able to obtain the things you need to do in life. And that's what I just tell them. So if this is a choice you make, you want to smoke, experimental, whatever you want to do, but it can become an addiction. But if you want to be successful and be a positive, person in the community, you can't smoke. I mean, you can't. You go ahead and try whatever you want to do, but make a decision in your life when you mature enough to say, hey, this is not what I want to do. Honestly, I was a young kid. I tried marijuana, like the minister said, at a very young age, exposed to it. Didn't think anything of it. But I got to a point in my life where I figured out this is not going to benefit me in the long run. This is something that I can do without. This is a decision you have to make in your life that you go through phases and you mature and you say, hey, this ain't. I can do without this. I'd rather have a successful career and a family and a house and a career than be high for 6 hours out of the day. And it's not a permanent. It's a temporary thing that you go through. So I try to express to make decisions, make good decisions in everything you do, because you're right. When you're under influence, whether it's alcohol or drugs, you're impaired and you don't know the decisions you make. You might not be as sharp as you would be. So, and I hope I go back to the old commercial, this is your brain on drugs with the cracked egg in the frying pan. Maybe to go back to that. Those commercials had people like, wow, they say smoking weed does diminish the brain periodically over a period of time. You lose, certain senses or your awareness or your smartness go down. So, just keep harping on that, people that smoke, they might seem cool, they can rap and they can dance, but ask them what's 10 plus 10, they might take a little while to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. So both of you all have very similar perspectives when it comes to cannabis use. What are your thoughts on efforts to legalize cannabis at the federal level?
I'll speak on this, and this is something that comes up and people talk about it, and I can always correlate it to what we talked about. Alcohol was illegal way before any of us were born, and bootleggers, and people was afraid to drink and because they get caught. But when they legalized alcohol, what happened? Everybody started drinking. So what did that mean? Everybody started driving. More DUIs, more manslaughters, more crimes for people, because the fear of getting caught is not there. So I correlated to cannabis. Yes, if you have, let's say, 30% of the community smoking right now because it's illegal, if you make it legal, that number will double, I guarantee you. Because now people say, hey, well, I can smoke it. So the more people smoking, the more people impaired, the more problems you produce within the community. No different than alcohol. The more people that start drinking, I would love to go back to before alcohol was made legal and find out how many people were drinking and driving, how many people were committing crimes. Probably very few. I mean, because they were afraid to drink. But once they legalize it, now the bootleggers, now they can't make it. Now more people want to try it. So they legalize cannabis straight across the board. More people would smoke it. More professional people would smoke it. More people would tamper with it and try it. And that means you increase the numbers of opportunities for something bad to happen when you increase the number of people producing this drug. That's my take. And people always say cannabis mellows you out. You don't see people, committing these crimes, but they just don't realize it. But it's a smaller number. But if you increase that number, you increase the chances of something out of those numbers, those people doing stuff unlawful.
Minister Durden.
Yeah, you can't sanction sin and expect something different to happen. It is what it is. You just spoke about it, alcohol, and just think about the opioid crisis. Opioids didn't just come around 5-10 years ago. Opioids been around before me and you. It's just that when it started becoming more accessible to the public, and then public had a demand for it because there's a street demand for it. There's that street element to it as well. And then, in certain communities where you can get it cheaper, you can get it more accessible. We usually tend to be the bottom feeders. It's like from cocaine to crack. Crack wasn't around in 50 years ago. All of a sudden crack comes out and the whole black community is tore up. But cocaine been around forever. And so crack wasn't treated the same as cocaine, even though both was illegal. But it was a different element of how it was treated based off of the community that was predominantly impacted or affected by it. Most people that sold large amounts of cocaine got they had the money to pay for high priced lawyers. And so a crackhead ain't got the kind of money that a drug dealer has. And so you mostly criminalize the poor because the poor don't have no defense. They don't have no resources. They don't have no money to be able to pay a cash bond of $100. It might be $100 they need to get out of jail. And because they done pretty much burnt all their bridges with everybody in the family, nobody's going to go get the crackhead out of jail because they know he's a crackhead, But if he sold keys, it's a different type of stigma, and there's a different type of acceptance for those types of people, and so I remember when I was selling drugs at an early age and how I stigmatized the crackhead and end up becoming one myself.
Mm.
But everybody that sold the big drugs was glamorized. They was put on this pedestal, because of what they was wearing, what they was driving, the jewelry, the money. The women came along with it. So it was a lifestyle, and just like you just spoke about. It's hard to tell these young people that see Snoop Dogg performing at the halftime show at the Super Bowl, who they gonna listen to? Somebody that works in the warehouse like me, just some guy that they see, walking around that they have access to every day, or somebody that they see that's really not accessible to them, but they idolize. And they look at that world that they're in, and they like, if Snoop Dogg can crip walk during the halftime show, and that whole behavior, I just think that whole behavior has been embraced, and like I say, there's an agenda, and so behind the agenda, there's consequences. There's consequences behind every choice. So legalize it at the federal level, make it where you could just go into any grocery store and go purchase it like you purchase cigarettes. You have to be 18, 21 years old to purchase it. The results are still going to be the same.
That's interesting. You said that. We actually have a lot of comments that are coming up on the YouTube and the Facebook Live right now. And we actually have one from Ronald McMillan, who I think you just kind of answered his question. He said, what ultimately do panel members think is a realistic and better option to the regulated versus unregulated, recreational versus medical debate about the use of marijuana in our society? Minister Durden, I think you kind of just touched on that. What you think?
What do I think about what can we do as a community or as a society?
Say, what is a better option versus having regulated versus unregulated, recreational versus medical? You just mentioned about, being able to get it in the store, get it on the street. You just kind of referenced that a little bit.
Yeah, ultimately, if that's what their plan is, if that's what they see down the road, that, governors of states will start, regulating it at the federal level, and you can go inside your neighborhood store and go purchase marijuana. I like I said before, there is no solution for sin. Mm-hmm. The only thing for solutions for that is to stop. That's the only solution that helped me. I can only speak for myself. There's nowhere in the world that 19 years later, after I have not used drugs, that I can, trick myself into thinking that I could just use casually, whether that be drinking, whether that be smoking. Why would I go back to smoking cigarettes? Why would I go back to smoking cigars? Why would I go back to smoking Black and Milds, or any other thing that I put fire to? Why would I go back if I'm good with just waking up and having life, health, and strength, being sober-minded, and being able to make choices and do the things that I aspire to do and be the person that I want to be in life? None of those elements is going to make me feel any better.
Yeah. This is a really, really good conversation, and I want to kind of give you all an opportunity to share any closing thoughts on the subject of unregulated cannabis and any advice that you would give to any of our listeners and viewers to this show. So, Captain Bobby, I'm going to start with you and just share some closing thoughts from your perspective on unregulated cannabis use.
Thank you. I just want to, the people that are listening or may have the questions, we've been given some, these are opinions of ourselves, not for me, roughly who I work for the sheriff's office here. This is how I feel about it. This is my belief on it. And sometimes it hits home, but people tend to minimize the effects of cannabis. They do, and it should not be minimized, because the cannabis has an effect on a community in a greater total, just the individual as a whole. It does. And I saw the question in that Mr. McMillan asked about what's the answer. I don't know the answer. The problem is this: if you make cannabis legal, and let's just say it's legal, no more charges, no one get arrested, how do you regulate this when people can still grow it? They can still get it from different ports. How do you regulate that? How do you arrest those people now? It's different than alcohol. Alcohol is very hard to produce alcohol. Now you got distilleries, you got people, got breweries. Yeah, they make it, but it's a process. Cannabis is nothing but a simple man-made, God-made product. So people are going to still um, buy weed or get it the illegal way and sell it because it's not a reason. People just want to legalize weed because it's an easy fix, and it's not an easy fix. It's an easy fix for those that want to use it, but there's so many different variables to deal with that. I would just tell people that's listening on the questions, the cannabis use it does cause problems. I can tell you a situation right now where we just dealt with a situation here in Tallahassee where they're actively gang members shooting each other over the sales of drugs because you go to a house and this person is selling weed or they have it. A young FAMU student just less than a year ago was buying cannabis from a guy, her and a girlfriend, and she got murdered on a drug sale over cannabis, buying weed. So it's not harmless. And that's a young lady life that was taken because of the chase of the dollar bill. There's a lot of in a minute, there is a lot of lucrative currency coming from cannabis, and the government knows it. It's easy. A small amount, many sales, and you make a lot of money. So I would like to encourage people to just always educate yourself, educate your kids, talk to them, talk about the dangers of it. Cannabis is not simple. I think that everyone over the course of time you'll come across it. Like I say, I wasn't always in law enforcement. I was a young male growing up in Tallahassee, and I got exposed to it. And I did. I mean, but I made a choice to say, hey, I can do without this. I want something better for my life. And if you choose to try that, try not to. But if you have no other way out, if it's something, but always know there's consequences in all the actions that you take. And one day you might be faced with law enforcement action. It might not, or it might be something more dramatic than that you might be impaired and you might drive and take someone's life. So just be careful and be aware of what's going on and what you're doing.
Minister Durden, closing thoughts.
I just don't see how drugs and alcohol or tobacco make this world or the society a better place. I just don't see it. I don't see that everybody could just freely go walk around smoking marijuana at their leisure, come to work, go to church, go to family events, smelling like marijuana, because it's legal. Everybody can do it now. I just don't see that making us better. I see us making people money, and there's very small society of people that makes the money, but overall the population of people end up becoming victimized like they always do when anything that I believe that the government has its hands in. I'm not just anti-government. I'm just saying things that come down that's federally regulated, and that white men get to make up the rules. And I'm not racist at all. I'm not prejudiced at all. I'm just speaking truth to facts. And if anybody that would like to do their research on the cannabis industry or the marijuana industry or the alcohol and tobacco industry, they just find out who's controlling that, who's controlling that, and who's making up the rules. The same people that make up the rules can break the rules too. So that's just where I stand at. I'm not condemning anybody that's that uses marijuana. I'm just speaking my truth. And I just thank you for having me, Heidi, to be able to speak this truth. And also, Captain, thank you for, sharing your thoughts on this experience as well.
You too. Yeah. Same to you.
I want to thank both of you all for sharing your experiences and for being the guests on today's conversation on Cannabis Virtual Forum, brought to you by the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative at Florida A&M University. Thank you to everyone who's watching and listening to this program. Tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comment boxes on YouTube and Facebook after this live program. If you complete the survey, your name will be entered into a drawing on April 6, 2023 to win a $100 gift card provided by one of Mary's partners. We also want to encourage you to go to the Florida Department of Health Office of Medical Marijuana Use website to learn how to obtain a legal medical marijuana card in the state of Florida. And we also encourage you to go to Florida A&M University's Mary website to learn more about this initiative, its educational programs, and additional information about cannabis use in Florida. Thanks, everybody.